I'm pleased to show you that the rustic garden bed is doing fairly well despite my not working on it. I did do a lot last year and made some changes. I put in some more shade plants and some of that work is paying off. So I'll show you a couple things that are new and I can give you updates. I did add some ferns. I'm not sure it's the right thing for my rustic garden bed. I really wanted this to be more of a foliage and flower bed. Although it's doing well there, I think it's better for a woodland setting. So there it shall stay until I replace it and move that somewhere else. But I think I prefer the ferns nestled under trees and in the woods. So that's something I might redo in the future. But let me show you what I do like in this garden. I did put some boxwood cuttings. I have about 4 or 5 of these throughout, and I think once they grow up a little bit, they'll be a nice backdrop for the perennial flowers. Oh, and since we're down here, let's talk about the coleus cuttings. Oh my goodness, I did not harden them off. And look how puny they are. They lost almost all of their leaves. I wasn't sure they were gonna make it, and they looked so good when I planted them. But you know what? That's operator error. I should have hardened them off and gotten them used to being outside in the sun and fresh air. And we've gotten a lot of rain, so I think that's why they are still alive. But all of them look really puny, guys. I'm so embarrassed. It's my fault. Right next to that, I have a buddleia, and surprisingly enough, even though this is quite a shady end of the bed, it's doing the best it's done. I've had it in 2 other places, and I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to put in a shrub here? And to be quite honest, I think I'm going to mix more shrubs in this bed. I know that my sister just got Bluebeard spirea, and it is a bright yellow, so that might be something nice to add at the end of the bed or elsewhere in the garden. But I think that shrubs and perennials make a nice little flower garden, especially blooming shrubs. So I expect if it gets enough sun that is going to make some fuchsia blooms. And then right behind it, I have 2 of Dale's Choice heucheras. So those do nicely in the summer. And my columbine is over here. It has finished blooming. It's got lots of seed heads. So I may cut these off and just lay them in the woods where a bunch of new columbine will grow. Right now I think that's enough for this bed. And over here, more operator error, guys, user error. This is Hummingbird Forest Fire Salvia. Clearly a sun plant. It's really not doing its best in this partial shade location. This was something new I planted, and it's a lesson learned. It really does need more sun. Here's another little boxwood that I'm glad I planted last year. I did pop a couple of my dahlias. It's a little bit hard to see all the green on green. Clearly I need to add some more blues and dark colored plants and maybe some chartreuse colors. I've got lots of green in here. So I just need some different hues to make it more interesting. So that's something to keep in mind when I am able to make some changes. Now, speaking of chartreuse, here's more of my puny coleus. Now this will come back, I'm quite sure of it, but we really have not had very hot days. And coleus really does appreciate hot weather. So hopefully this will look good later, but again, my fault for not hardening it off. In the middle here, despite the lack of sun, I have 3 autumn joy sedums doing really well. Cardinal flower, which will bloom red later on. And I did put in a couple of my white geraniums that I overwintered inside in my cardboard box method. So those will look nice, and white flowers in a shady area do add a brightness. So those will bloom more later on. Again, heat lovers. So all of these things will do much better in the heat. Now, I have an observation to make. I have some regular chives in between the white geraniums, and I have some garlic chives. And look at this. They do much better in a part shade situation. So clearly that's the type of chives that need to be here. And my lawn people were just here. I think maybe their lawnmower caught on this. I'm gonna have to get somebody that doesn't have a bad back to fix that for me later. But let's continue to look at what's in this bed. I did successfully grow a couple of primroses from seed, and these are the smallest. I put in here and here, but they're very, very early spring bloomers, and hopefully by next year they'll have little blooms on them and look like regular sized plants. Behind it I have a nice stand of chrysanthemum, which of course bloom more in August and September. I do have a couple zinnias back here, but they're not looking very robust. This end of the bed gets more sun, but it's just not a lot of sun back here. And with all the rain we've had, the tree canopy is actually extra thick. And then over here, I have some marigold, which I'm gonna be very happy to have when it's August and September and it's blooming in the heat of the summer. They always give me blooms later on, but that's looking nice, doing pretty well. And right next to it is another primrose looking a lot bigger. Those are my primrose babies, which I'm gonna be so excited about next spring when they bloom. And I had put another peony over here. All this green on green is hard to see, so clearly I need more different hues of greens and yellows, and that is a note to myself as I add things to this bed. And like I said, I might add a few shrubs in different colors of green or yellow. And again, here, some painted coleus. This was grown from seed and it's looking puny, but mark my words, later on, when the heat rolls in, should look a lot nicer. And here's more of my puny coleus. And believe it or not, this is looking better than it was. But let's make a note of this, because hopefully a month or a month and a half from now, I'm gonna come through and show you some very nice coleus plants. Behind it is some agastache, which blooms over the summer. Very delicate blooms that the hummingbirds love. And then over here, I have some ornamental oregano. And actually, I thought I had pulled it all out, but now I'm happy to see that either it seeded itself or perhaps spread underground. But that gives me a little bit of a different color leaf, which I think is a nice contrast to all the greens down there. That whole end of the bed is just green, green, green. And over here we have a little more variation, and I'm liking it. Now guys, these are tiger lilies that are putting up buds. I'm being scolded by a bird. I think I'm next to a birdhouse, so I'm gonna make this end of the bed a little bit quicker. But I planted these last spring and absolutely nothing came up. Nothing at all. And I thought, well, those were a dud. But they must have been making roots underground and growing their bulbs. And this year they came up, and I expect they will bloom later. This is my original primrose plant that bloomed earlier this spring, and it's beautiful. And I put another baby next to it from my seedling tray. So that one was grown from a plant, but it's always nice to have those super early little blooming, low growing plants to help you get excited about the growing season early on. Here's another chrysanthemum, which will bloom late summer or fall. I'll be happy I have that. And my ground is so muddy. It's been nothing but rain this spring. So it's the opposite of last year. Look, the lawn people made quite a mess here. So they did a number on the yard today, but that's okay. They're doing their job and I don't have to do it. But let's look down here. These are black-eyed Susans. Oh, I just slipped. Okay, I don't need another accident. Here's some black-eyed Susans in the corner, and those are fantastic drought-tolerant flowers that you can always count on in late summer when everything else is going dormant in the extreme heat around here. And it's also a Maryland, it's the Maryland flower, so it's a native flower, and they're beautiful. They're beautiful when they bloom. My Sweet William stand, when I was doing some work around the garden, I pulled up a lot of the seedlings, I think. But I'm going to let all of these drop seed, and hopefully I'll have more Sweet William next year. And that's starting to go over. That bloomed a while ago. I think this might be a weed, so I'm going to pull it out. And I did this season tuck in one of the geraniums right next to the agastache, and I think that's kind of nice, the contrasting leaf shapes. And then here, throughout here, I have larkspur, which I don't have great hopes for. They're very small, and I think they need full sun. And then over here, oh, here's a good example. These are Sweet Williams that obviously seeded last year, and they will grow flowers next year. And here's the best surprise of all. Look at this silver dust, Dusty Miller. I planted these last year. I had grown them from seed, and they overwintered. So maybe they're a biennial around here, or maybe they're a perennial. We'll have to see. But isn't it fantastic when you plant something last year and it overwinters? And then I have a very small stand here of Verbena bonariensis. Look at this teeny bud. It's not looking very promising, but I think perhaps this needs full sun, and this is definitely a part sun area, and at the other end of the bed it's a full shade area. So over here we have a couple of marigold plants. They're doing okay. They would be thicker if some heat rolled in. I do have some chives doing better on this side of the bed. And here are some bigger looking seedlings. It's funny how the soil makes a difference. On this side it must be better soil. But these are my primrose seedlings. Let me show you the size of that. Looking much better than my primrose seedlings on the other side. So I'm pleased about that. And again, I popped in another little boxwood cutting that I had rooted. So I have maybe 4 or 5 of those throughout the bed. And I think they just add a nice little bit of structure, especially in the winter when everything else will die back. But again, I think my plan when I'm back on track is going to be a couple of colorful shrubs. When I say colorful, I mean either blooming or they have a foliage that's yellow or red, something a little bit different to break up all the green. And then over here, look at this terrible coleus. All my fault. I blame myself. But lesson learned. And, you know, maybe I'll go get a couple of coleus plants just so I can have some good looking ones. But I actually think they'll catch up when the heat comes out. I do have some salvia, and a bee is enjoying the flowers. So those are 3 that come back every year, and salvia are pretty easy. They don't seem to mind the part shade. They don't grow really fast, but they still do put up flowers, even though it's partially shady. And then I have more of my annual salvias here. Not blooming, they're definitely sun lovers. They're just green plants, so that was kind of a waste of time. And we're back at the end of this bed. So, like I said, I think those are better suited for the woodland. I love how they look in the woods. It's more natural. And maybe that's where I can put a part shade loving, colorful shrub. So we'll see how this all does. Like I said, I was a little bit reluctant to show you without lots of blooms, but this is sort of an update. I think this is its best angle. So thanks so much for watching this rustic garden bed update. And I'm hoping to show you as it gets prettier and prettier throughout the season. I'll see what I can add maybe before my surgery, and hopefully it's going to be very lush. I'll see you next time.